rebuttals, and we go through the thing. We're extending that today a little bit, but we do need to respect, we're trying to get to as many questions from our members, so thank you for respecting that.
My name is Tom Hyde, and I'd like to ask a question of Senator Roussant concerning drones and law enforcement. I understand you introduced a bill. Could you comment on your bill, and if there are any concerns concerning the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution?
Thank you.
Thank you for that. The bill did not pass. The bill that I filed was brought to me by the Chief of Police of St. Petersburg, who indicated they wanted an additional tool that would help with the security of officers. If they were executing a search warrant, then they could send in a drone initially for officer safety. It included a component for surveillance of masses of people, like crowds, like the Las Vegas shooting, or where security could be enhanced by the use of a drone. So it didn't pass, but it was brought to me by law enforcement, and I supported it.
I'll just, 10 seconds, your Criminal Justice Committee in the House, but I chair it, spent a lot of time on it. Simply put, technology and innovation have to fit within the Fourth Amendment. We've continued to do that, not to allow technology and innovation to bend the Fourth Amendment. So a lot of times what we're looking at is what would be the traditional surveillance methodology, what's different from technology, and how we apply the exact same Fourth Amendment protections. It's been a big focus for our committee. I'm happy to talk to you about it later.
Anybody else?
Hi, everybody. Deborah Belanti here. Thank you all for coming. My representative didn't make it, so I'm glad you're here that I can ask this question of. I have to worry as a mom about education funding, about her safety, actually going to school. Now I have to worry about her right to choose as a woman. We've seen what's happened in Alabama, Mississippi, and Ohio, and now in Georgia, I believe. And fortunately, the abortion ban did not pass this session, thankfully. But Representative Lauren Book has proposed an idea of not allowing any legislation concerning women's bodies and their autonomy to be passed in our legislature without more representation of women. Do you support that?
That is so interesting. I'd like to take a look at that, but I don't know that there's a way to do that. I just don't know that there's a way to do that. But what I will say is I support a woman's right to choose, and I adamantly debated against and pushed back against the bill that we're trying to restrict women's right to choose. What we have now is a law that will require parental consent. Florida had been a parental notification state, but parental consent goes a step further, and the Florida Supreme Court had previously found that that is a violation of a woman's right to privacy, which, by the way, the Florida Constitution provides a higher protection of right to privacy than even the federal Constitution does. So this very same bill that was brought forth this session was previously found unconstitutional. We're starting to see a trend with that. I don't know if you're noticing. I think part of why we're seeing that trend, if you're wondering, is because we have new appointments to the Supreme Court, and I think we've got some folks in the legislature who want to test out and see what maybe this more conservative-leaning Florida Supreme Court will do, but it's very frightening to me, and I will always stand up for a woman's right to choose.
Let me keep this simple. I support a woman's right to choose. As a man, I defer to women on this particular issue and the will of the voters in my district that elected me. Period.
I think that most of you here that know me know that my daughter Anna, a partner to our new mayor Jane Castor, by the way, yay, was born when I was 16 years old. I was a junior in high school. And when I sat down with my mom and my 18-year-old boyfriend at the time and my God, it was my decision between my God, and it was my decision between my family and my boyfriend at the time, who we married, and were married for 20 years. But it is not, in my opinion, a decision of the legislature. I mean, we shouldn't be legislating this. It should be between a woman, and it should be between her partner. I feel very strongly about this, and I would support. I don't support. I can't imagine how we could implement something like that. But it's a good thought that I like. but I don't think it's completely practical. But, you know, the decision to have a child or to abort a pregnancy is between a woman, her partner, and her God.
So I think
Come on, Jamie.
there's kind of two questions there.
Join us on this one.
Daryl, you always know how to get me, and it starts with individual rights, individual freedoms. And there is no individual right and individual freedom that is more sacrosanct than life. The reason that the Fourth Amendment matters is that we're talking in an extreme scenario, the Fifth and Sixth Amendment, we're talking about an extreme scenario where government can take your liberty, or in the most extreme, your life. It is an oftentimes difficult conversation for us to have because it creates divides, but I'll never apologize for defending life. And that means answering some tough questions, and that means saying, even in these cases, do you believe in life? Now, what I will say is that there's a lot of hypocrisy all the way around this issue. There's hypocrisy from the pro-life crowd that pretends that once the life is born, we've done our job by defending life. The reality is our foster care program, our community services, our wraparound services are fundamentally failing. So for people like me who say I defend life, I will always ardently defend life. I need to maintain that commitment on the backside, because no society is better off when life is denigrated. To the point of your question about who represents that kind of thing, what I would suggest, and one of my favorite stories in history is Jackie Robinson, and we all remember Jackie Robinson, an amazing story, but we oftentimes forget about Branch Rickey and Pee Wee Reese. And that transformation that happened in society took people that were an affected class, and it took people that were the unaffected class, the people who were benefiting from the power or the privilege, stepping down and saying, hey, this should be a community that doesn't discriminate. And so while I think it is important that we listen to all voices, I don't know that we ever want to get to a place where we say only the affected class makes decisions on policy. I think it's more important for us to build bridges through perspectives and understanding to get to the right policy.
Thank you. We are going to keep moving, okay?
Thank you. My name is Ella Coffey. My question is, if you can explain a little bit, Senator Rouson and Senator Cruz, the Tampa toll roads coming through your vote on Tampa toll. Just kind of give us a little bit of explanation on that. Thank you.
Well, when that bill was on the Senate floor, it was a study. The bill was a study. Portion of it is a study. So that seemed reasonable. And then I give kudos to Senator Linda Stewart, who worked very hard, very, very hard, to make sure that the environmental groups had a seat at the table for that study. So at the time that I voted for the bill, it sounded reasonable. I know, listen, I don't like toll roads, and I know that the environmentalists are upset about the possibility of this, but the last time that we had to evacuate, or people were evacuating the state, I watched on the television, even though people argued with me that it didn't happen, I saw people with their cars on the side of the road because they didn't have access to gas, stranded there with families. So I do believe, and if you've been in Tampa in the last 3 or 4 years, you can see that the traffic has tripled, and it's harder to get around. I don't know how we avoid this.
It was difficult not to vote for a task force, a study. Nothing in the bill obligated the road to be built right now. And quite frankly, some of the leadership that pushed this bill won't be around when the task force returns its recommendations and it comes back to the legislature for appropriation. But I joined Senator Cruz in her concern about congestion during evacuating times. We all saw the pictures. We all saw the vivid reminders. What I really thought you might ask a question about was the Competitive Workforce Act, that for the 3rd year in a row we couldn't get a hearing so that people of LGBT community could be respected in their workplace.
Anybody else? Okay.
Good afternoon, Steve Bernstein. Thank you all for your public service and for the passion you brought to the job this year. Quick question. It's been said that our region is the largest region for small business in the country, or certainly one of them. Can you think of a measure that you achieved in this most recent session that small businesses can take some comfort in knowing was passed and will help improve their futures? And conversely, can you think of something you'd like to achieve in the next session that might help further the interests of small business?
You know, I really, I don't know if there are any realtors in here, but I want to thank the Board of Realtors for their advocacy because they work very hard on issues that are important to them. And one issue that I've seen them fight for the past 8 years was fighting to keep the Sadowski Fund, trust fund, from being raided. And the Sadowski Trust Fund is a fund that is there. It's a doc stamp that's collected at the time of a closing, and it is dedicated to affordable housing. And when the economy was bad, we swept that trust fund, and we continue to sweep it. But that to me, Steve, is one of the areas that we made great strides on this session, is the reduction of sweeping those trust funds and more money for affordable housing.
I'd add, maybe in a similar vein, kind of most direct, continuing to go to war on the duplicative commercial lease rent tax, right? So the duplicative nature of that is a direct increase in price to consumer, cost of operating a business. So I think that's probably the most targeted thing that happened. I think overall maintaining a fiscal health that again shows Florida as the most fiscally strong state in America. For all the criticism we get, we continue to be ranked as the most fiscally strong state in America. That obviously has a direct impact on the stability and certainty that businesses need to start, grow, and thrive.
Hi, I am Patrick Basquiat, a member of Tiger Bay. I am proud that my state rep and my state senator are here, and for all four of you, thank you for your service and stepping up and representing us in Tallahassee. My question is about the Competitive Workforce Act that you mentioned, Senator Husan, and why it hasn't passed. Bill Carlson and we have our Steve Bernstein, former chair of the chamber, we all serve together on the board. And I oftentimes look at some of these issues not to diminish the impact on discriminatory impact on a significant class of citizens, but I look at it also from the standpoint of business. So did you co-sponsor this bill? Can we get this bill passed this next session? It's a business issue. It affects all the business across the state of Florida. It's important for a class being discriminated against, but it's important for the fiscal health of our state.
That's a great question. I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of the Competitive Workforce Act. I think you're right that it makes us less competitive economically in this state. The perspective that I can bring as a freshman legislator, having not been there the prior years where this has been introduced, I've come to understand that sometimes you do have to push for more than one session to try to get something accomplished, and it's important to bring groundswells of support where we can. I think that was a difference perhaps between last session with the texting while driving bill that was brought, and then this session where we see that actually crossed the finish line. So I think we have to keep the pressure on and make sure that we are letting people know on both sides of the aisle that this should be a bipartisan issue because we want to be as economically competitive as we can, and we just can't let up the fight.
Two reasons why I think it didn't get heard is ideology and the fact that it may open the floodgate to litigation. That's what I heard from leadership as to why I couldn't get a hearing. It took me 2 to 3 years to get grandparents' rights through the legislature. And like Representative Driscoll says, I think this will pass one day. And it will pass because it's the right thing to do. Businesses, organizations across the state don't want someone discriminated against in their workplace. They want to be respected as human beings, as workers, just like everybody else. But I think ideology and a fear of the floodgate opening for litigation were two of the main reasons why I heard it would not get a hearing. But I do believe if we keep at it, and I was proud to be the sponsor of it in the Senate, and picked up a number of co-sponsors that had it gone to a vote, it would have passed based on the co-sponsorships.
I'm happy to be a co-sponsor, and again, I don't think I could say it much better than Senator Rousseau said. It's about money. It's about litigation. I've been running equal pay for equal work for women for years. Can't get a hearing on that bill either. And, you know, I think it really comes down to what are we opening ourselves up to, and how badly will we be sued here. So it's coming. I believe it is coming. I think that businesses need to posture for it because we are not giving up on this issue.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to I was being good to you. And the clock's already running. You're cheating.
Okay, give a minute.
So it's not ideology. It's just not. There are fringe members of all ideologies in Tallahassee. The fringe members are never the reason that things don't pass. This is a phenomenal example of where everybody, I believe, that matters agrees on the what. And the what is no discrimination. The how is where the discrepancies come into place. And the reason that this is significant, and I want everybody to really truly think through this, because I continue to have meetings and an open door on this, begging for a solution. This bill would create the first protected class that is not visually obvious. It actually requires the business to judge. It actually requires the business to discriminate and say, I think this person is in this class, or I don't believe this person's in this class. And so the what of how we protect discrimination is absolutely an open door begging for a solution. I think the reason there's the fear for the litigation is the business has no real proper way unless the employee says, I'm part of this class. That's, I think, the problem is I don't think anybody wants to create a scenario where inside the workplace the labeling of classes is happening. If anybody has solutions on that front, I and my colleagues are wide open.
Thank you.
Well, I want to make it very simple for you, Representative Grant. Am I a man or a woman?
Under pending policy, you could change your mind today to tomorrow, and so in that if that's put in the statute,
Visually, what am I?
a woman.
All right, but I'm not a protected class because we do not have the amendment to the Constitution that we need, which is ERA. Will you support that?
Well, we do have you as a protected class, because if you're discriminated on the basis of being a woman, every single thing is currently
Tell those
protected.
women in Alabama.
Tell them what? What would you like me to tell them?
Are you telling me that a woman cannot have an abortion when she knows she's pregnant? How does a woman know she's pregnant? She has to have a test made?
Sure, but that's a different question than whether or not females are a protected class with employment discrimination. And there's really no dispute that a woman is a protected class for employment discrimination.
There is no question that there are protected groups. Minority groups are identified, physically identified. Women are physically identified. They should be a protected class, and women should be included in the U.S. Constitution. The one disappointment I had in the legislature was that 3 states were needed for ratification. I think there are now just 2 needed. Will you sponsor that bill?
The ERA bill?
Yes.
No, I won't.
Would be others.
And the reason is there's an absence of any indication, right?
I think it says it all to women.
Well, no, it doesn't. And I think rhetoric matters and words matter, because the reason I'm not supporting it has nothing to do
That's why I'm asking you
with...
for your word.
Right. The reason I'm not supportive of that initiative is it has nothing to do actually with men versus women. The reason I don't support it is that it has a significant economic impact in the face of plenty of studies that actually show we don't oftentimes have the wage disparity that we have. And secondly, where we do have the wage disparity that exists, that's where the businesses in the community...
We don't have a wage disparity?
I think you can look at the macroeconomic studies, and I'm happy to sit down with you. You don't actually have...
I'm happy to sit down with you and tell you you're wrong.
Well, I look forward to that.
Do any of the other legislators have a response on this? She did ask if anybody else would support that, just for fair opportunity to answer.
Yes. I'm a proud co-sponsor of the ERA.
I'm a co-sponsor of ERA every time it comes down, but I want to remind you that what you're seeing here today is why we have debate in the Senate and in the House on the floor, and we have the committee process, because Jamie Grant, is passionate about what he believes, even though it's different from what we believe in our constituent base. And I respect his right to believe that.
Yes, co-sponsored over and over and over again. And I think there may be a picture in the halls of the House or the Senate where you and Helen Gordon Davis and Betty Castor are all walking, probably from the 60s or the 70s down the street. But when I pass by that picture, I give you a kiss. I want you to know. And I do want to close with this, that 90%, perhaps 95% of the time that we vote, the board lights up green, and we usually vote unanimously on many, many bills. It is a few core issues that we will probably never meet or agree on, but most of the time we're working hard to bring dollars back to this state, and we work together. And I've worked many times with Jamie Grant, and I want to tell him that I appreciate that he's here in the den and fighting. Because when people come at me and they go after me or catch me somewhere in the street and they want to argue with me, I tell them, that is what makes America great. You are entitled to your opinion without being afraid. I had an aide that worked for me whose grandmother disappeared in Cuba in the middle of the night because she gave someone a place to stay who was part of the revolution. But this is America. You're entitled to your opinion, and we will fight. And if you're not happy with Jamie's opinion, then
Take me out.
Work harder. Get rid of it.
That's the recourse. Tongue in cheek aside, that's the recourse, right? Going back to the petition, it's not the what, it's the how.
Yes.
So if my constituents are frustrated with me, take me out. That's a healthy republic. That's exactly how it should work.
Thank you. We've got one more question, and then we're going to ask for a closing statement, if you would, while our Garfield committee debates.
Thank you. I'm Bill Wagner. I'm the oldest person here. I'd like to ask each of you a question. It should be yes or no. Would you favor moving Florida to a gun-free state, moving it in that direction?
I think we know the answer to that. But I'll let you carry on.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I would have to say no, only because of the federal constitution does provide the right to bear arms. So I don't think that we could go that far, but I do believe that we could move towards, banning some high-capacity weapons that would probably help us a great deal in changing the gun culture that we have in our country today.
I agree with that. In fact, I'd like to see us move away from the gun-shine state to a more regulated state in terms of guns.
I was in the member lounge on the House side one morning, and one of the members who's a single mom came rushing in, and she was telling someone else that it was opening season of hunting day, and that her boys were all excited. They were getting up early. They were going to go hunt.